The glass towers of Cross Industries pierced the Seattle skyline like crystal needles, reflecting the morning sun across Elliott Bay. On the 23rd floor, Victoria Sterling adjusted her oversized glasses and tucked a rebellious strand of auburn hair behind her ear. Her modest gray blazer hung loose around her petite frame as she hunched over architectural blueprints that would soon revolutionize urban living. At 28, Victoria possessed a brilliant mind trapped behind carefully constructed walls of invisibility. She preferred it that way. Recognition meant attention, and attention meant vulnerability. Her designs spoke for themselves in the language of clean lines and sustainable innovation. Even if their creator remained a whisper in the corporate machinery, a soft ping of the elevator announced the arrival of her colleagues. Victoria instinctively straightened her posture and busied herself with the holographic display showing her latest creation, a revolutionary, eco-friendly housing complex that could change how cities approached affordable living. Another early. "Morning, Vicky," called out Rebecca from accounting, using the diminutive name that made Victoria wince internally. She nodded politely, offering a small smile that never quite reached her eyes. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Victoria could see the executive floors above, where decisions that shaped thousands of lives were made daily. She often wondered what it felt like to command such power, to have people hang on your every word. But wondering was as close as she would ever get to that world. Chapter 2. The Summons from Above. Daniel Cross stood in his corner office 40 floors above, surveying his empire with the satisfaction of a man who had built something extraordinary from nothing. At 35, he had transformed a small tech startup into one of the most influential companies on the West Coast. His sharp jaw and piercing blue eyes had graced countless magazine covers, but success had come at a price. Every relationship felt calculated, every interaction measured against ulterior motives. His assistant knocked gently before entering. "Mr. Cross, the quarterly design reviews are ready. The architectural team has prepared presentations for the new housing project." Daniel nodded absently, his mind already shifting to the evening's social obligations. The annual innovation gala was tomorrow night, and he still needed a companion who could match wits with the city's intellectual elite. His usual circle of socialites suddenly felt inadequate for such an important event. "Send up whoever designed the Meridian housing complex," he said suddenly, surprising himself with the impulse. "I want to hear directly from the architect, not through intermediaries." 30 minutes later, Victoria found herself standing outside the executive elevator, her portfolio clutched against her chest like armor. The message had been simple. Mr. Cross wanted to see her immediately regarding the Meridian project. Her hands trembled slightly as she pressed the button for the 40th floor. The elevator ride felt eternal. Victoria caught her reflection in the polished steel doors and barely recognized the nervous woman staring back. When had she become so afraid of being seen? Chapter 3. An unexpected encounter. Daniel's office was a monument to success. Floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views, modern art pieces worth more than most people's homes, and furniture that whispered of old money and new power. Victoria felt immediately out of place in her practical flats and conservative clothing. "Miss Sterling," Daniel rose from behind his mahogany desk, and Victoria was struck by how his presence filled the room. She had seen him in company meetings, of course, but always from a distance, always as part of the anonymous crowd. She managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "You wanted to see me about the Meridian project? Sit." He gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. "I've been reviewing your designs and I'm impressed. The integration of green technology with affordable housing is exactly what this city needs." Victoria blinked in surprise. She had expected criticism or demands for changes, not praise. "Thank you, sir. Sustainability shouldn't be a luxury reserved for the wealthy." Daniel studied her face with an intensity that made her squirm. There was something familiar about her, something that tugged at the edges of his memory. "How long have you been with Cross Industries?" "For years," Victoria replied, wondering why such a basic question felt so loaded. "I started right after graduate school. And in all that time, I've never noticed you before?" The statement hung between them, neither question nor accusation, but something more unsettling. Victoria felt heat rise to her cheeks. I prefer to let my work speak for itself. Daniel leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his features. Something about this woman intrigued him beyond professional interest. She possessed a rare combination of talent and humility that stood out starkly against the ambitious climbers who usually sought his attention. Chapter 4. The proposition, Ms. Sterling. Are you familiar with tomorrow's innovation gala? Daniel asked, seemingly changing the subject entirely. Victoria nodded cautiously. Every employee knew about the company's premier annual event, though few were actually invited. It's cross-industry showcase for the city's technology leaders. Exactly. And this year, your Meridian project will be the centerpiece of our presentation. Daniel stood and walked to the window, his silhouette commanding against the cityscape. I think the architect should be there to present her own work. Victoria's breath caught. Sir, I'm not really suited for public speaking at that level. Perhaps the department head could... I insist, Daniel interrupted, turning back to face her. In fact, I'd like you to attend as my guest for the evening. Words hit Victoria like a physical blow. Daniel Cross, the man who could have any woman in the city, was asking her to one of Seattle's most exclusive events. The absurdity of it made her wonder if she had misunderstood. I don't understand, she said finally. Why me? Daniel moved closer, and Victoria caught the subtle scent of his cologne, expensive and understated. Because authentic talent deserves recognition. Because I'm tired of superficial conversations with people who only see dollar signs when they look at me. The honesty in his voice surprised them both. Daniel rarely revealed his frustrations with the gilded cage of his success. But something about Victoria's genuine confusion made him want to be truthful. I need time to think about it, Victoria said, her mind racing with implications and impossibilities. Of course, but, Victoria. Daniel used her first name deliberately, watching how it affected her. Sometimes the most extraordinary opportunities come disguised as simple invitations. Chapter 5. Sisterly wisdom. Victoria drove home in a daze. Daniel's words echoing in her mind. Her modest apartment in Capitol Hill felt like a sanctuary after the overwhelming luxury of the Cross Industries executive floor. She kicked off her sensible heels and collapsed onto her second-hand sofa, staring at the ceiling as if it might provide answers. The sound of her front door opening announced the arrival of Emma, her younger sister and the only person who truly knew Victoria's heart. Emma worked as a stylist for a high-end salon and possessed all the confidence and social grace that Victoria lacked. You look like someone who's seen a ghost, Emma said, setting down grocery bags and studying her sister's expression. What happened? Victoria explained the encounter with Daniel Cross, watching Emma's eyes grow wider with each detail. When she finished, silence filled the small living room. Let me get this straight, Emma said slowly. The Daniel Cross, billionaire, bachelor and Seattle's most eligible man, asked you to be his date for the biggest social event of the year. It's not a date, Victoria protested weakly. It's professional recognition. Emma laughed, a sound full of affection and exasperation. Oh, sweetie. No man asks a woman to be his companion at a gala for purely professional reasons. Especially not a man who could have supermodels fighting for the privilege. Victoria pulled a throw pillow over her face. That's exactly why this makes no sense. I'm nobody special, Emma. I design buildings and go home to my cat. I don't belong in his world. Emma gently removed the pillow and sat beside her sister. Do you know what? I see when I look at you. I see a woman so brilliant she's solving urban housing crises before her 30th birthday. So beautiful she hides behind ugly clothes because she's afraid of attention. So kind that she spends her weekends volunteering at the homeless shelter. Emma... No, listen to me. Emma's voice grew firm. You've spent so many years making yourself invisible that you've forgotten you're worth seeing. Maybe this Daniel Cross recognizes something in you that you've been hiding from everyone else. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. What if I embarrass myself? What if I prove that I really don't belong there? Then you'll handle it with the same grace you bring to everything else, Emma said softly. But what if you don't? What if you discover that you belong in places you never imagined? Chapter 6. The decision. That night, Victoria stood before her bathroom mirror. really looking at herself for the first time in years. Behind the oversized glasses and conservative styling, she could glimpse the woman she might have been in different circumstances. Emma was right. She had been hiding, not just from others, but from herself. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "I hope you'll give my invitation serious consideration. Tomorrow's event will be diminished without your presence." Victoria stared at the message, surprised by its personal tone. She thought about Daniel's words, about authentic talent deserving recognition, about extraordinary opportunities disguised as simple invitations. For the first time in years, Victoria Sterling made a decision based not on fear or practicality, but on possibility. She typed her response. "I accept your invitation, Mr. Cross. Thank you for the opportunity." After hitting send, she called Emma. "I'm going to need your help," she said without preamble. Emma's delighted squeal could probably be heard in the next apartment. "I thought you'd never ask. We have 18 hours to reveal the real Victoria Sterling to the world." "I'm terrified," Victoria admitted. "Good," Emma replied. The best adventures always start with fear. As Victoria hung up the phone, she caught her reflection once more in the darkened window. Tomorrow night she would step into Daniel Cross's world, not as the invisible architect hiding in the shadows, but as herself. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. She had no way of knowing that across the city. Daniel Cross was having his own moment of reckoning, wondering what impulse had driven him to invite the mysterious architect who had somehow captured his attention so completely. For the first time in years, he found himself genuinely curious about another person, eager to discover what lay beneath Victoria Sterling's carefully constructed facade. Neither of them could predict that tomorrow night would change everything. They thought they knew about themselves and each other. The stage was set for a transformation that would reach far beyond mere appearances, touching the very core of two souls who had been living half-lives, waiting for someone brave enough to see their true worth. The morning sun filtered through Emma's downtown salon as Victoria sat nervously in the styling chair, watching her sister gather an arsenal of beauty tools. The exclusive boutique had been closed to other clients for the day, creating an intimate space for what Emma dramatically called Project Cinderella. "First things first," Emma announced, circling Victoria like an artist studying a blank canvas. "We're not changing who you are, revealing who you've always been." Victoria's fingers instinctively moved to her glasses. "I need these to see." "No, you don't." Emma gently removed them, revealing Victoria's striking green eyes. "You've been wearing non-prescription lenses for years as a shield. Today, we remove all shields." The transformation began with Victoria's hair. Emma's skilled hands worked through the auburn waves that had been hidden beneath severe ponytails and tight buns. As layers of conditioning treatments restored natural shine and movement, Victoria watched a stranger emerge in the mirror. "Tell me about him," Emma said as she worked. "What did you see when you looked at Daniel Cross?" Victoria considered the question carefully. "Loneliness," she said finally. Despite all that power and success, there was something lonely in his eyes, like he was surrounded by people but truly seen by none of them. Emma smiled knowingly. "Maybe that's why he noticed you. Sometimes it takes one lonely soul to recognize another." Chapter 2. Discoveries and Revelations Across the City. Daniel Cross was experiencing his own form of preparation anxiety. He stood in his penthouse closet, selecting a tuxedo, while his mind wandered to the evening ahead. His butler, Harrison, observed his employer's unusual restlessness with quiet concern. "Forgive me for saying so, sir," Harrison ventured, "but you seem particularly invested in tonight's arrangements." Daniel paused in his selection process. "There's something different about her, Harrison. She's brilliant, but she hides it. It's beautiful, but doesn't seem to know it. In a world full of people trying to impress me, she actually seemed uncomfortable with my attention. Perhaps that's precisely what makes her worth your attention." Harrison replied with the wisdom of someone who had served the Cross family for 30 years. Meanwhile, at his private club, Daniel's business rival James Mitchell was holding court with several prominent businessmen. Mitchell had built his real estate empire through aggressive tactics and political connections, always seeking ways to undermine Cross Industries' influence. "I hear Daniel's bringing a mystery date to tonight's gala," Mitchell remarked to his Companions. Someone from his own company, apparently. How wonderfully... pedestrian. The comment sparked laughter around the table, but Mitchell's eyes held a calculating gleam. Any crack in Daniel Cross's perfect facade was an opportunity to exploit. Chapter 3: The Unveiling. Back at the salon, Emma put the finishing touches on her masterpiece. Victoria's transformation was complete, but it wasn't the dramatic makeover of fairy tales. Instead, it was a revelation of natural beauty that had always existed beneath layers of deliberate concealment. Her hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, catching light like burnished copper. The makeup was subtle, but striking, emphasizing her luminous green eyes and the delicate bone structure she had hidden for years. The dress Emma had selected was a midnight blue creation that hugged Victoria's curves while maintaining an air of sophisticated elegance. "But I don't recognize myself," Victoria whispered, staring at her reflection in wonder. "That's because you've been looking at a mask for so long, you forgot what your real face looked like," Emma replied, tears of pride glistening in her eyes. "You're absolutely stunning, Vic, but more importantly, you look like yourself, the real you." Victoria turned slowly, watching the dress move with fluid grace. For the first time in years, she felt beautiful. It's not just presentable or professional, but genuinely radiantly beautiful. "What if this is all a mistake?" she asked, vulnerability creeping into her voice. "What if I'm just setting myself up for humiliation?" Emma took her sister's hands firmly. "Then you'll handle it with dignity and grace, just like you handle everything else." "But what if it's not a mistake? What if tonight is the beginning of something wonderful?" Chapter 4. The gala begins. The grand ballroom of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel had been transformed into a technological wonderland. Holographic displays showcased Seattle's most innovative projects, while soft jazz music created an atmosphere of sophisticated celebration. The city's elite mingled beneath crystal chandeliers, their conversations a mixture of business strategy and social positioning. Daniel arrived early, ostensibly to check final preparations, but really because nervous energy made waiting at home impossible. He wore a perfectly tailored black tuxedo that emphasized his tall, athletic frame, but his usual confidence felt somewhat shaken by anticipation. Mr. Cross approached Margaret Chen, the event coordinator. "Everything is ready for Ms. Sterling's presentation?" The Meridian Project display is positioned prominently near the main stage. Daniel nodded, scanning the growing crowd for any sign of Victoria's arrival. Several women had already approached him, hoping to claim his attention for the evening, but he politely deflected their advances. Tonight, he was waiting for someone specific. James Mitchell entered with his usual entourage, immediately beginning his circuit of influential guests. His eyes found Daniel across the room, and a predatory smile crossed his features. Hay had come. Tonight with his own agenda, one that involved undermining his longtime rival's reputation. Chapter 5. A grand entrance at precisely 8 o'clock. Victoria Sterling stepped from the limousine Daniel had sent. The hotel's entrance was lined with photographers capturing arrivals, but their cameras turned toward her with unusual interest. Who was this stunning woman arriving alone at Seattle's most exclusive event? Victoria's heart hammered against her ribs as she walked through the hotel lobby. Every step in her elegant heels felt like a small miracle of balance and grace. The security guard at the ballroom entrance checked her invitation with obvious surprise. "Ms. Victoria Sterling, guest of Mr. Daniel Cross," he announced to his colleague. Clearly wondering how he had missed this name on the VIP list, the ballroom doors opened. Victoria stepped into a world that seemed to exist in a different dimension from her everyday life. The space glittered with wealth and influence, conversations flowing around displays of technological innovation. And there, near the center of it all, stood Daniel Cross. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and Daniel felt something shift in his chest. The woman walking toward him bore little resemblance to the nervous architect from his office, yet everything essential about her remained unchanged. The intelligence in her eyes, the determined set of her shoulders, the quiet strength that had first caught his attention. Victoria moved through the crowd with surprising grace, nodding politely to curious glances while maintaining her focus on Daniel. As she drew closer, he could see the subtle tremor in her hands, the way she held herself with careful control. She was terrified, but facing that terror with remarkable courage. "Miss Sterling," Daniel said, when she reached him, his voice carrying a warmth that surprised them both. "You look absolutely radiant." "Thank you," Victoria replied, accepting the glass of champagne he offered. "I feel like I'm in someone else's dream." "Perhaps you are," Daniel said softly. "Perhaps we both are." As Daniel and Victoria began their evening together, James Mitchell observed from across the room with growing interest. He had expected Cross to arrive with one of his usual companions from Seattle's social register. This unknown woman represented either a fascinating vulnerability or an unexpected strength in his rival's armor. Mitchell approached a mutual acquaintance, Seattle's Society columnist Patricia Westbrook. "Patricia, darling, who is that enchanting creature with Daniel?" "I don't recognize her from our usual circles." Patricia studied Victoria through her opera glasses with professional curiosity. "Victoria Sterling, according to my sources. At Cross Industries' architecture department." "Quite the Cinderella story, isn't it?" "Indeed," Mitchell murmured, his mind already calculating possibilities. If Cross was becoming romantically involved with an employee, there could be interesting implications for corporate governance and potential scandals. Meanwhile, Victoria found herself surprisingly comfortable in Daniel's company as he introduced her to various guests. Her knowledge of urban planning and sustainable design impressed the city's planning commission members, while her genuine interest in their projects created authentic connections. "You're a natural at this," Daniel observed during a quiet moment. "Between introductions, I'm terrified," Victoria admitted with a small laugh. "But everyone seems genuinely interested in discussing real issues, not just social pleasantries." "That's because you're interesting," Daniel replied, his blue eyes serious. "You have substance, Victoria. In a room full of people trying to impress each other, you're actually worth being impressed by." The compliment sent warmth through Victoria's chest, but also triggered her defensive instincts. "You don't need to flatter me, Mr. Cross. I'm already here." Daniel stepped closer, his voice dropping to an intimate tone. "I'm not flattering you. I'm stating a fact that I should have recognized long before tonight." Chapter 7. The presentation of the evening's formal program began with Victoria's presentation of the Meridian housing complex. Standing before Seattle's most influential citizens, she felt every eye in the room focused on her. For a moment, panic threatened to overwhelm her composure. Then she saw Daniel in the front row. His expression encouraging and proud, Emma had slipped in among the guests, beaming with sisterly support. And suddenly, Victoria remembered why she had become an architect in the first place. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice growing stronger with each word, "housing is more than shelter. It's the foundation upon which families build their dreams. Communities create their identity, and cities shape their future." As Victoria spoke about sustainable design and affordable innovation, the room fell silent with genuine attention. This wasn't a polished corporate presentation, but a passionate vision delivered by someone who truly believed in her work. Expertise shone through every technical detail, while her compassion resonated in every community benefit she described. James Mitchell watched with growing frustration as Victoria commanded the room's respect. This was not the amateur embarrassment he had hoped to witness. Instead, Cross had somehow discovered a genuinely remarkable woman. When Victoria concluded to enthusiastic applause, Daniel felt something he had rarely experienced, genuine pride in another person's achievement. As she returned to his side, slightly breathless from adrenaline, he realized that his feelings for her had evolved far beyond the simple attraction that had prompted his invitation. "That was extraordinary," he told her, meaning every word. "Can't believe I did that," Victoria laughed, the tension of the evening finally beginning to ease. "For a moment, I forgot to be afraid." "Maybe that's who you really are," Daniel suggested. "The woman who forgets to be afraid when she's doing what she loves." As the evening continued with dancing and informal conversations, Victoria found herself relaxing into a version of herself she had never experienced. Confident without being arrogant, engaging without being desperate for attention, beautiful without being vain. But across the room, James Mitchell was making plans of his own, having decided that Victoria Sterling represented either an opportunity to exploit or a threat to eliminate. the evening's apparent fairy tale. Success was about to encounter its first real test. The stage was set for revelations that would challenge everything. Victoria and Daniel thought they knew about each other and about the true nature of the attraction. Drawing them together, the gala reached its crescendo as couples swayed on the polished dance floor beneath glittering chandeliers. Victoria found herself in Daniel's arms, moving to a slow waltz that seemed to isolate them from the surrounding crowd. His hand rested gently on the small of her back, while hers settled naturally on his shoulder, creating an intimacy that felt both thrilling and terrifying. "I have a confession," Daniel said softly, his breath warm against her ear. "When I invited you tonight, I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought I understood my motivations." Victoria tilted her head to look at him, noting the uncertainty in his usually confident blue eyes. "And now? Now I realize I was completely unprepared for you," he admitted. "The real you? I mean, not the quiet architect I thought I was inviting, but this brilliant, passionate woman who just captivated an entire room." Before Victoria could respond, a commotion near the edge of the dance floor caught their attention. James Mitchell had cornered Patricia Westbrook and several other influential guests, his voice carrying just loud enough to be overheard by nearby couples. "It's quite fascinating, really," Mitchell was saying with calculated malice. "The lengths some men will go to win a simple wager. Though, I suppose choosing an employee does make the transformation more manageable." Victoria felt Daniel's body tense against hers, his face going pale as Mitchell's words reached them. Around them, other dancers were beginning to slow their movements, straining to hear the conversation that was rapidly becoming the evening's main entertainment. "A wager?" Patricia prompted, her journalist's instincts sharpening. "Oh yes," Mitchell continued, his smile predatory. "Our dear Daniel made quite the interesting bet at the Pinnacle Club last month. Something about transforming an ordinary employee into suitable companion for tonight's gala, rather like that old film. What was it called? My Fair Lady? Chapter 2. The unraveling Victoria stopped dancing entirely, pulling back to stare at Daniel with growing horror. The blood had drained from his face, and his mouth opened and closed without sound as he struggled to find words that could possibly explain or excuse what they had both just heard. "Is it true?" Victoria asked, her voice barely a whisper, but carrying the weight of absolute devastation. The surrounding couples had abandoned any pretense of dancing, creating a circle of avid spectators around the unfolding drama. Daniel's silence stretched for what felt like eternity, his inability to immediately deny the accusation serving as confirmation. "Victoria, I can explain," he finally managed, but she was already stepping backward, her face a mask of composed dignity that somehow made her pain more heartbreaking than tears would have been. "No explanation necessary," she said with remarkable calm, though her hands trembled as she smoothed her dress. "I understand perfectly now. The sudden interest, the invitation, the compliments, it was all part of your game." Mitchell watched the scene unfold with obvious satisfaction, while Patricia Westbrook frantically typed notes on her phone, already crafting the society column that would dominate Seattle's gossip for weeks. "Victoria, please?" Daniel reached for her, but she gracefully evaded his touch. "Don't," she said quietly. "Whatever dignity I have left, please let me keep it." Emma pushed through the crowd of onlookers, her face flushed with protective anger. She had heard enough to understand what was happening, and her first instinct was to shield her sister from further humiliation. "Come on, Vic," Emma said gently, placing a supportive arm around Victoria's shoulders. "Let's go home." But Victoria surprised everyone, including herself, by straightening her spine and lifting her chin with regal composure. "Actually, I think I'll stay for a while longer. After all, I've never been to a gala before. It would be a shame to waste the experience." What happened next would be talked about in Seattle's social circles for years to come. Instead of fleeing in embarrassment or creating a scene of emotional destruction, Victoria Sterling did something far more powerful. She handled her public humiliation with such grace and dignity that she transformed herself from victim to victor in the space of a few remarkable moments. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, turning to face Daniel's rival with a serene smile, "thank you for your honesty. It's refreshing to encounter someone willing to speak so directly about manipulative behavior." Mitchell's triumphant expression faltered slightly at her unexpected composure. "I suppose I should be flattered," Victoria continued, her voice carrying clearly across the silent ballroom. "To be considered worthy of such an elaborate deception suggests I must have more potential than I realized." She turned to address the room at large, her presence commanding attention in a way that had nothing to do with her stunning appearance and everything to do with her unshakable self-possession. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption to your evening. It seems I've been cast in a rather tawdry drama without my knowledge. However, I want to assure you all that the Meridian Housing Complex presentation was entirely authentic. My passion for sustainable architecture and affordable housing remains unchanged, regardless of anyone else's ulterior motives." Spontaneous applause began from several guests who recognized the extraordinary dignity with which Victoria was handling an impossible situation. The clapping spread throughout the room until even some of Mitchell's allies found themselves applauding her strength. Daniel stood frozen, watching the woman he had underestimated once again demonstrate depths of character he was only beginning to comprehend. Every word she spoke drove home the magnitude of his betrayal and the remarkable nature of what he had lost. Chapter 4. The Truth. "Emerges there's something else you should all know," Victoria continued, her voice never wavering. "Despite the personal cost of public exposure, I was aware of the wager from the beginning." Its revelation sent murmurs of surprise through the crowd. Even Daniel looked shocked, staring at her with newfound confusion. "A woman learns to protect herself in a world that often sees her as either invisible or disposable," Victoria explained. "When Seattle's most powerful bachelor suddenly notices the quiet architect, prudent inquiry reveals interesting information." She looked directly at Daniel for the first time since Mitchell's revelation, her green eyes holding depths of pain and disappointment that cut him more deeply than anger would have. "I accepted your invitation despite knowing about the wager, Mr. Cross, not because I was naive about your motives, but because I realized I had spent too many years hiding from myself. Your game, distasteful as it was, offered me an opportunity to discover who I could become when I stopped being afraid." Emma watched her sister with tears of pride streaming down her face. She had always known Victoria possessed extraordinary strength, but witnessing this public display of grace under extreme pressure revealed depths of character that even she hadn't fully appreciated. "So thank you," Victoria concluded, her smile genuine, despite the circumstances. "Tonight has been genuinely educational. I've learned that I can command a room, present complex ideas clearly, and apparently clean up quite well. I've also learned that some people are exactly who they appear to be, while others are far more disappointing than their reputations suggest." The not-so-subtle comparison between her own authenticity and Daniel's deception hung in the air like a challenge. Chapter 5. Redemption and Recognition. As Victoria prepared to leave, several unexpected things happened. First, the city's planning commissioner approached her with a business card and an invitation to discuss potential consulting opportunities. Then the mayor's aide requested a meeting about expanding the Meridian concept to other neighborhoods. Finally, 3 different venture capitalists expressed interest in funding her sustainable housing initiatives. What had begun as Daniel's calculated manipulation had inadvertently launched Victoria's career into a stratosphere she never could have achieved while hiding behind her cubicle walls. Ms. Sterling called Margaret Chen from the event coordination team. "There are several journalists here who would like to interview you about your housing innovations. Would you be willing to speak with them?" Victoria glanced around the room, noting how the evening scandal had somehow transformed into recognition of her professional achievements. "Of course," she replied, "though I suspect they're more interested in the personal drama than architectural innovation." "On the contrary," said Dr. Rebecca Torres, Seattle's leading urban planning expert, approaching with obvious admiration. "Your presentation tonight was exceptional. The integration of sustainable technology with affordable housing represents exactly the kind of forward-thinking approach our city needs." As Victoria found herself surrounded by professionals eager to discuss her work, Daniel watched from across the room with growing realization of what he had lost. Not just a potential romantic partner, but a genuinely extraordinary woman whose true worth he had been too blind to see until it was too late. James Mitchell, meanwhile, discovered that his attempted sabotage had backfired spectacularly. Instead of destroying Daniel Cross, he had inadvertently created a new star in Seattle's professional landscape, while revealing his own petty vindictiveness to the city's elite. Chapter 6. A heart transformed the evening wound down with Victoria, graciously accepting congratulations and business propositions from dozens of influential guests. Her transformation was complete, but not in the way anyone had expected. She had evolved from invisible employee to recognized expert, from hidden talent to acknowledged leader. As guests began departing, Daniel found himself alone, except for Harrison, who had witnessed the entire debacle with quiet disapproval. "Sir," Harrison said carefully, "if I may offer an observation?" Daniel nodded numbly, still staring at the spot where Victoria had demonstrated such remarkable strength. "In 30 years of service to your family, I have never seen you look at another person the way you looked at Miss Sterling tonight, not with calculation or strategy, but with genuine admiration and affection." "I destroyed any chance I had with her," Daniel replied hollowly. "She'll never forgive this betrayal." Perhaps Harrison agreed. "The question now is whether you're the kind of man who accepts defeat gracefully, or the kind who fights for something truly worth having." Across town, Victoria sat in her apartment, still wearing her beautiful gown, staring at a collection of business cards and contact information from the evening's encounters. Emma had insisted on staying overnight, concerned about her sister's emotional state after such a public ordeal. "How are you really feeling?" Emma asked gently, bringing Victoria a cup of tea. "Strangely liberated," Victoria replied, surprising them both. "For years I've been afraid of being seen, afraid of rejection, afraid of not being enough. Tonight I faced all those fears at once and discovered I could survive them. And Daniel," Emma prompted carefully. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, processing emotions too complex for simple answers. "I'm heartbroken," she admitted finally. "Not because he made a wager, but because for a few hours tonight, I believed someone as remarkable as Daniel Cross could see something special in someone like me." "Someone like you?" Emma repeated with gentle indignation. "Vic, did you see what happened tonight? You walked into that room as his guest and left as the evening's most impressive person. It wasn't because of him. That was all you." Chapter 7. The grand gesture. 3 days later, Victoria arrived at Cross Industries to find her modest office transformed. Fresh flowers covered every surface, and her computer screen displayed a message. "Please come to the rooftop garden, D. Victoria." Considered ignoring the summons entirely, but curiosity overcame wounded pride. The elevator ride to the rooftop felt eternal, her heart hammering with anticipation and dread in equal measure. The rooftop garden was Seattle's hidden oasis, space Daniel had created as a retreat from corporate pressures. Today, it had been transformed with string lights and soft music, creating an intimate atmosphere that stood in stark contrast to the gala's public grandeur. Daniel stood waiting beside a table set for two, his usual confidence replaced by nervous energy that made him seem younger and more vulnerable than she had ever seen him. "Thank you for coming," he said as she approached. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," Victoria replied honestly. "What do you want, Daniel?" He gestured toward the chair across from him, but she remained standing, maintaining physical and emotional distance. "I want to apologize," he began. "It's not just for the wager, but for everything it represents. For seeing you as a project instead of a person, for being so blind to your worth that it took a stupid bet to make me pay attention." Victoria's expression remained carefully neutral. "Apology noted. Is that all?" "No," Daniel said, moving closer despite her obvious reluctance. "I want to tell you that somewhere between accepting that ridiculous wager and watching you handle its revelation with more grace than I could ever possess, I fell in love with you." The words hung between them like a bridge Victoria wasn't sure she could trust to bear her weight. "Love," she repeated with skeptical emphasis. "Or guilt?" "Love," Daniel insisted, his blue eyes holding hers with desperate sincerity. "Real, consuming, life-changing love for a woman who challenges everything." "I thought I knew about myself." Victoria studied his face, searching for any sign of deception or manipulation. What she saw was raw vulnerability, that seemed to cost him everything to reveal. The wager was about transformation, she said finally. About taking someone ordinary and making them extraordinary. But here's what you never understood, Daniel. I was never ordinary. I was just invisible to you. I know that now, he replied quietly. I know I was blind and stupid and unworthy of the chance you gave me. But Victoria, what happened between us these past few days, what I felt watching you shine at that gala, what I feel right now knowing I've lost you, it's not about any bet. That's about recognizing that you're the most remarkable woman I've ever known. Chapter 8. Love's true victory. Victoria walked to the garden's edge, looking out over the city where her new professional opportunities were already beginning to take shape. The evening's humiliation had somehow transformed into career advancement. Beyond her wildest dreams, "You asked me once what I saw when I looked at you," she said without turning around. "I told you I saw loneliness, but I also saw possibility. The man you could become if you stopped performing for everyone else and started being real." Daniel joined her at the railing, careful to maintain respectful distance. "You saw more clearly than I did? The question now," Victoria continued, "is whether that man I glimpsed actually exists, or whether he was just another performance designed to win a different kind of wager." Daniel was quiet for a long time, understanding that his answer would determine everything that followed. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "I've been performing for so long, I'm not sure I remember how to be authentic. But Victoria, you make me want to find out. You make me want to become the man you saw, even if I'm not him yet." Victoria turned to face him, seeing past his wealth and power to the scared, lonely person beneath. "That's the most honest thing you've ever said to me." It's the most honest thing I've said to anyone in years," Daniel replied. They stood in silence as the sun set over Seattle. Two people who had found each other through deception but were now facing the possibility of something genuine. "I can't promise to forgive you immediately," Victoria said finally. "What you did hurt me more than you probably realize. But Daniel, double quotes, yes, I can't promise not to eventually forgive you either. Because despite everything, I saw who you could become, and that person might be worth waiting for." Daniel's face transformed with hope so profound it was almost painful to witness. "What does that mean for us?" Victoria smiled, the first genuine smile she had given him since Mitchell's revelation. "It means you get to prove that the man I fell in love with during our dance actually exists. No wagers, no transformations, no games. Just two people discovering whether what they felt was real enough to survive the truth. And if it is," Daniel asked, hardly daring to hope, "then maybe we'll discover that the best transformations aren't about becoming someone else," Victoria replied. "They're about becoming brave enough to be who you really are." As the first stars appeared over Seattle, Daniel Cross and Victoria Sterling stood together on the edge of possibility, two people who had found love in the aftermath of deception and discovered that sometimes the most beautiful stories begin not with perfection, but with the courage to be honest about imperfection. The wager had been won and lost, but love had triumphed over both. Epilogue. 6 months later, Victoria Sterling stood before the Seattle City Council, presenting her revolutionary, affordable, a housing initiative that would transform 3 underutilized neighborhoods into thriving communities. Her consulting firm, Sterling Sustainable Design, had become the city's premier architectural innovation company. In the audience, Daniel Cross watched with the same pride and admiration he had felt that first night at the gala. But now, without any ulterior motives or hidden agendas, their relationship had grown slowly. It's built on honesty and mutual respect rather than manipulation and deception. After the presentation, as applause filled the council chambers, Daniel met Victoria's eyes across the room and saw not the woman he had tried to transform, but the extraordinary person who had transformed him. Sometimes the greatest love stories begin with the worst intentions, but become beautiful when two people choose truth over comfort, growth over stagnation, and love over pride. And sometimes, it's the person who thinks they're creating a transformation discovers they're the one who needed changing all along. The end.